I dreamt I was a butterfly, but now I have awoken and I no longer know if I'm a person who dreamt he's a butterfly or a butterfly who is dreaming he's a person. Toastmaster of the day, ladies and gentlemen. A physicist woke up one morning and he found this notebook on his doorstep. He picked it up and flipped through it and found out that these were the blueprints for a time machine. And he thought to himself, time machine, what nonsense. And he took this notebook and kept it high up on a shelf, so high up that he forgot about it for nearly 20 or 30 years. Later on, when he was dusting off his shelf, he picked this notebook up again. And as he was flipping through it, he realized that these plans, they are actually feasible. And so he started building a time machine. After he's done with the time machine, he thought back and was wondering how he came into these blueprints and realized that someone had kept this notebook on his doorstep 30 years ago. And he realized that someone has to be him. So he powered up his time machine, went back in time 30 years and kept the notebook on the doorstep of his younger self and watched as the entire event unfolded all over again. Now, for those of you who didn't fall asleep during this story, this is something called the Bootstrap Paradox. A paradox is something that has no answers. And let me tell you why this is a paradox. I mean, in all simplicity, this is a plot that is used in countless movies and TV series all over. The Avengers movie, it does this plot very well. But one thing that they don't explain. Number one, the notebook and the physicist. When they go back through time, do they age? Do they not age? And if they do age, do they finally deteriorate away into nothing if they go far back enough in time? Number two, there is both an old physicist and a young physicist existing at the same time. This is the same person of two different ages existing at the same time. The third and the biggest problem here is, who was the person who came up with this time machine idea? I mean, someone came and kept the notebook on that physicist's doorstep, and that same physicist goes back in time and he keeps it on his same doorstep. Who is the author? Let me explain. This is called a causal time loop. Now, we traditionally know time to be flowing in a straight line, where the past affects the present and the present affects the future. But in a causal time loop, time flows in a circle. And just like there is no beginning to a circle, finding out who came up with this idea for the time machine is redundant. Now, there are several theories floating around that could account for all of these, given the fact that someone invents a time machine. Imagine time to be like a river. A river flows in one direction only, right? But when it meets an obstacle that it cannot go beyond, the river splits and creates another branch. And just like that, if time was a river, and whenever some timeline splitting incident like time machine happens, the timeline splits and creates a parallel branch of time. Now, this parallel branch, it is similar in all aspects to the original timeline, except for the fact that the subtle differences caused by this time machine are prevalent in this new timeline. Every time someone uses that time machine to mess around and fool around and go back or forwards in time, it splits and creates another parallel timeline, creating an infinite number of possibilities with infinite number of people, with infinite number of combinations of things that could happen. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If someone creates a time machine somewhere, there may be infinite versions of you doing infinitely different things with the same face, same clothes, but in a completely different world, doing something completely different. Now, my mentor always told me, when I'm starting a CC, always start off with a quote that grabs everyone's attention. And I hit you guys with the most mind-boggling quote I have ever come across in a TV series. This quote I stole from the TV series Dark, which uses this plot of the bootstrap theory at its heart, and it uses it in a more complex and more grand way than you could ever possibly imagine. Now, all of what I said is purely imaginary. I mean, time machines, timelines, timeline splitting, all of those nonsense. But as you're at home, bored, locked down, and probably have a ton of assignments just like me, waiting to get your attention, have you ever wondered how complex time is? How this simple wristwatch on my hand represents something that is so infinitely complex that a very few people in this world could probably understand it properly. Time, something that we always have too much or too little of. So, if you ever get the notebook, where would you go with it? Toastmaster of the day, over to you.